we did a test case on the perfect property and proved dramatic results with this, and now we've been using the strategy over and over and over again. Guys, we're here for the Red Banner Team podcast, again with my CFO, Brandon Fonts. My name is Peter Bradrick, and we run one of the top real estate teams in Western Washington here in Kitsap County, based out of Port Orchard and Bremerton, and we're here to talk about the real estate market.
Absolutely.
That's what we do. Brandon, what's your view from the bridge? There's a lot happening in the financial world and interest rates and everything that is shaking out in the news in the financial sector. What's your take on what's happening right now?
Well, the buzz is obviously what's the Federal Reserve going to do on September 16th, right? That's always the conversation. The unknown conversation is what are the mortgage interest rates attached to, which is the 10-year, right? So they have a correlation with the 10-year. If you see the 10-year go down, mortgage interest rates go down. Right. So what happened with the buzz around the September 16th potential announcement of an interest rate cut is that the 10-year actually dropped pretty dramatically.
Already,
yeah.
So everybody's holding their breath out there, and what really happened behind the scenes is it already changed.
Yeah, public ideology is that the Federal Reserve will set those rates, but it's more linked to the 10-year than anything else. Now, there is a correlation between Federal Reserve rates and the 10-year, but what we saw is buyer sentiment's picking up. Buyer sentiment's moving. You've seen that
which we haven't seen in quite some time this year.
Yeah, if at all.
Well, not this year. Yeah, not at all this year.
No, been really rough. So one of the things too is that, I mean, you saw it in your own clientele interaction, right? Am I correct in that?
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. So buyer sentiment has picked up. We haven't seen it relate to listing home prices yet, but I believe we're actually going to see that manifest in, is our current inventory going to either have to A, meet what the buyer demands for the pricing are, which is a pullback, or B, is it going to remain steady like it has been, which has really been that sort of buyer-seller tug and war that we've been experiencing this year, right? Or is it going to remain steady and the interest rates are going to allow people to step in to those price points they haven't been privileged to because of those higher interest rates?
Yeah.
I don't know. Those are the conversations that are out there right now, though.
Let me bring you guys up to speed. Back in 2021, after the entire market got flooded with free checks from the government, interest rates plummeting like we've never seen before, we had one of the most frantic buyer markets in the real estate community that we have ever seen. It's something that even appraisers today, when they're evaluating properties, they'll say, hey, we're going to exclude anything from this year because it was such an outlier in terms of the frantic activity. What we saw happen the next year was near the end of 2022, everyone had gotten used to this crazy high bidding war, prices just floating up from wherever you stuck it on the market. And all of a sudden, interest rates come up, and there was just this screeching halt that happened. And suddenly, the entire market didn't really know how to reach equilibrium because we went from frantic bidding wars to this very mellow, almost malaise from the buyer community. This year, we started the year with almost a retracement back to what we experienced at the end of 2022 and into 2023. Through 2024, things picked back up. And right now we're experiencing, well, this year, we've experienced, I don't know how to put this. It's easy to slip into like negative. People are like, oh, the market's so weird. It is very different, and it is weird in various different elements. We're seeing the single most, picky is the word that comes to mind, but that sounds negative towards buyers because buyers have earned the right to be as picky as they want. the most cautious buyer sentiment across the market that I've ever seen in over a decade in the real estate industry. And what that means for sellers is two things. One is, I've been saying my entire career, the market bless is perfect.
Yeah.
But what it also means is, like, again, I just want to bring you guys up to speed. We're experiencing this crazy phenomenon where, again, rewind back to 2021. If a house is worth $600,000, you put it on the market for $600,000. All the comps say it's worth $600,000. It bids to some crazy high number, well beyond $600,000, and it's really exciting to be a seller. Really discouraging to be a buyer. On average, buyers were losing. I think I heard the number 14 offers to get one accepted back in the busy season of 2021. Right now, what we're experiencing is if that house is worth 600 and you list it at 600, it will sell for, and I'm using rough numbers to illustrate a point.
Sure.
These are not highly researched. Don't ask me for the footnotes, but this is our world and this is what we do every day. The house is worth 600,000. And you list it for 600,000. It's going to sell for about 575. What most people want to do is, oh my goodness, it's taking a long time. I want to make sure that I get that bidding war. So if it's worth 600,000, then I want to list it for 650, 625, because the thought process is, and it's a logical thought process, list high in the anticipation of, well, if it's going to take a while, then I'm just going to camp out at this higher price point, and by being kind of obstinate with this price point, I'm going to get that. And if a seller needs a certain price point, great, do whatever you got to do. But if, and this is the case for most people selling houses, you just want the most money you could possibly get. That's what most of us want when we sell anything. And so what we're finding, and Brandon and I, we've done this over and over and over again, really in the last 6 weeks. Honestly, after we've gotten our ass handed to us with houses that absolutely, with massive amounts of research, should have sold for a certain price point, and then they don't, and we drop, and we drop, and we drop, and it's horrifying.
On more than one occasion.
Yeah. To great numbers. But here, to finish this, that I wanted to tell you guys about, what we're finding is that fictitious $600,000 house, if you list the house for $575,000, it will most likely not only sell for $600,000 but sell for above. And we haven't tested this, and I'm sure there's a bottom to that. If you list that $600,000 house for $300,000, that would just be irresponsible and silly. But there's a trigger in the market that's happening right now where, how would you describe it, Brandon? The buyer pool is looking for something. It's almost like they need to feel a significant discount, and then everyone will come to the table with the best offer and bid up the exact same hypothetical house. And it's not hypothetical because we're doing this all the time, but in this analogy, from a very discounted price above what we would have predicted that it would sell for. Whereas the exact same house, either overpriced or even accurately priced, will sell for less.
Yeah, it's I think about it like on a regular, because we got to attack these things from multiple different angles and try and get ahead of the game. But I mean, there was an obvious suffering of recency bias on both sides. So if you're looking at it from the seller side is saying, well, I can list something. If my house, let's use your $600,000 analogy. If my house is worth $600,000, I should be able to list it for $620,000, $630,000, $650,000, whatever the case may be. And then in about 2 or 3 days, I should have a couple offers, and then we'll get to evaluate those offers.
Right.
I mean, that's the recency bias, because we're going back only 18 months to 2 years, and here's our environment, and so on and so forth. And on the buyer side of that, they have a recency bias that favors lower prices, because this 10%, 15% increase is also a recent event. They're also coming off of these interest rates that were exceedingly low, like you mentioned, and they think that we're going to revert back to lower interest rates.
Right.
So you really have, there's a very strong disconnect if both parties are using a recency bias that favors their perception.
Because we've had two very different markets inside of the last 4 years.
Precisely.
It's 2025, 2021, utter franticness bleeding into well into 2022.
Right.
2022 and 2023, almost borderline a buyer's market.
Mm-hmm.
And then we recover that. Yeah, that's a fascinating way of looking at it because both parties, I mean, we see this all the time. And like we all are tempted to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Client has a house, and that house needs a lot of work, and they have the most favorable conceivable perception of their house, and then they turn around and they look at somebody else's house, and it's like, well, why on the earth would I pay top dollar for that? That's not really in that great of condition.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so, like, I get it. I think we all do it, and that's part of what we get paid to do is bring truth and reality and statistics and expertise to the table to bring people back to reality. But that's a fascinating way of capturing the reality of what's happening. With recency bias, one individual, i.e. the buyer, might be looking at it 12 months different in their memory than the seller is, and there's a Mexican standoff, and thus welcome to the market of 2025.
Yeah, in the harder scenarios, so this is one of the most difficult scenarios to combat, especially as it pertains to buyer-seller recency bias. And like one of the things that you just described is a very common phenomenon in behavioral economics, which is price anchoring. Right, so there's this scenario where, let's use TVs as analogies, right? So if I have a TV and I want to sell it for $500 and it's X amount of inch and it's a flat screen, let's just say all features and benefits similar. If I want to sell it for $500 and it's overvalued, what am I going to do? I'm going to put a TV next to it that's $1,000. Now all of a sudden we're comparing two very similar things. This one's half the price. Well, that's a value. I'm going to go after that. That's price anchoring. I'm anchoring a price in your mind that creates value or a disconnect depending on what you have to combat, right? But then as it pertains to recency bias, we've had conversations in the not too distant past where that recency bias has actually played on both sides, your buyer and your seller. So I'm selling my house and I want to buy another one. Well, I want to sell my house and I want to get X amount way overvalued because I'm thinking about how this scenario played out in 2022, but I also want to go buy a house at a significant value. So you're literally taking both sides of the coin. So I want to sell my house. I want to price it at, it's worth $600. I want to price it at $660. Now go find me a $600,000 house at $550. It's like, well, where is this scenario occurring in the world where you actually have both sides of that? Well, the reason is because the mind is divided into this recency scenario where, you know, housing prices weren't 15% overpriced, so I should be able to find one that is. But houses also went for significantly overvalue, so I should be able to list mine and overvalue well.
Right.
And that's really the most difficult thing to combat in the public sector right now is like when we have these conversations with people.
So I think where the rubber meets the road is for somebody out there invested in real estate, trying to absolutely maximize both sides, because when you're both buying and selling, which is most of our clients,
Correct.
we actually need to look at it completely differently. And what we're recommending right now to all of our clients is you want to buy and you want to sell at the exact same time. And this is stressful, and like it's so whenever you position yourself to be the absolute kingpin in any scenario, you want to win the freaking Olympics, you're going to have to put yourself under more stress than anyone else in the entire world. Obviously, in that scenario, you got genetics and all kinds of stuff. But in the house scenario, the analogy holds true, because if you got good bones to the house and you bought well, you might just have good genetics of your house. But at the end of the day, the best case scenario, and this is not a fit for everyone, is to do two opposite strategies. On the selling side, make your house look amazing as best as possible, and price ridiculously aggressively. And what would you say? What would you attach? Like, can we put a percentage? I've been saying 5%, but I'm not even sure that's strong enough. At 500,000.
I think you're right. I think it's 5%, but recent examples has shown that 10%, it's like you mentioned, it's exactly like you mentioned. If you take a house and let's say it's worth 600,000, what would a 5% reduction be on that? It would be 570,000. So we would shave $30,000 off. You left it at 570. You've been experiencing bidding, right? Because you've created a perception of value. Look, my house is worth X amount, but I'm offering it to you at 570. People are willing to overpay.
Right.
That.
And it's actually incredibly consistent.
Yeah, 610, 620 over what it would be. However, if you don't give the buyer an incentive right now they're saying, give me an incentive. What's going to bring me to your house as opposed to any other one that's already listed at what we think the value should be. You create that perception of value, buyers are willing to pay or overpay for the house. Seems to be the experience.
Incredibly consistently at the moment, I might add.
But it's very consistent. So if you come in 10%, so now we would be talking about 540,000. It has also posed similarities to moving up to that 600, 610 analogy number, right?
And in the scenarios that we've recommended, a 10% reduction in if the house is worth 600,000, you list at 540. Those scenarios are scenarios, and I told the specific client we just did this with 45 days ago, there was enough in this property that needed an extra incentive to bring the entire community out. And the crazy thing is, at the 10% price reduction, we rebounded substantially more than when we're doing a 5%
consistently.
Yeah. Reduction of value or list price. So just to take this home for you guys, on the selling side, make the house look as spectacular as possible, and then reduce at a minimum of 5% below value. And here's the, I got to keep this thought, but the crazy thing is, if you don't, you'll sell for less than a 5% reduction of the value. Absolutely,
every time,
unequivocally, every single time.
Yeah, at this moment in time, that is absolutely correct.
Yeah, September 7th, 2025, and the markets shift, and one of our specialties is bobbing and weaving with the market, and you have to move quickly and at the moment. But let me finish this thought for you. So you list your house at 5% below market value, and we're finding very consistent results that sells over what it should sell for. And if you don't, you'll sell it for substantially less than 5% below what you should sell it for. But on the buy side, if you can be flexible and if you can be patient, don't go after our listings that are listed 5% under value, because you're going to have to compete against the whole rest of the market. Shop out there, and there is a significant increase in inventory right now with the way that the market is holding. And there are a ton of opportunities of houses that have been sitting on the market 75 days or longer, even 30 days. But at 30 days, the deals don't exist. 75, 80, 100 days. And if you're willing to put 10 offers in at 10% below market value and keep a steel gut about it and not get emotionally rocked, because it's really hard not to get emotionally rocked when your offers are getting denied, you can list your house 5% below market value and sell it for probably at least 2.5% above what you would have sold above market value. And in this scenario of 600,000, you list it at 575, and it's going to bid up over. And then you go out and you shop for the deal, and if you're patient, the odds are you're going to get 5 to 10% below market value. And so you, by having like a gut of steel, listing below, bidding up, and then submitting low offers on all these other houses. Now, practically, how does that work? That's really hard to pull off, because you might be homeless in the meantime, and it might be all kinds of things. But that is the glitch in the real estate market that we're finding and helping our clients with right now.
So here's what's the unusual thing. If we go back just recently, and so let's rewind about 2 weeks, we're having a conversation. And we're talking, there's like a calm in the air right now. It's almost like, what are the buyers doing next? Because what they're not doing is they're not coming out and they're not bidding up houses, right? So what are they doing next? And we thought about it, and I said, he and I are talking, I feel like what they're going to do is they're going to outwardly reject these higher price points, which are actually just stable price points over the last 2 years, but elevated from their recent ideas of where the housing prices should be. So I guess like the analogy might be this is the slack tide moment where the tide came in and pushed the prices up.
Yep.
And now we're at that moment of inflection where it reverts back, where it hasn't revert back yet. The data doesn't tell us that the prices are moving backwards, but the air is telling us there's a calm. There's a moment of calm in the slack tide before that tide starts pushing back out again. Now, I'm not saying that prices are going down. I'm also not I'm not raising the hypothesis that prices are going down. But what I am saying that we discovered recently that the buyers exist through an experimental process that sort of randomly happened. I'm talking about the Orchard, right?
Yeah.
And discovered that the buyers are out there. So the way that they have to be persuaded to show up to the market is to bring the prices down. That's their confirmation. Look, the prices are down. Now I'm going to show up. Which tells me that when we thought at that moment, at that inflection point where it's like, okay, our price is going down, I'm not too sure. We still had the adoption of our previous strategy, list and then retrace until you enter. Yeah. And then at that moment, we said, what if this buyer showed up, did it again, buyer showed up, did it again. Okay, sentiment in the buyer's market has now changed.
Yeah.
They have rejected current prices and they are now showing up with 5 to 10% pullbacks. So is the entire market going to head that direction? To be determined. You don't know.
That's a lagging indicator. Like,
it's a lagging indicator.
We'll see in 60 days.
Precisely. And especially in our industry, right? You show up to the grocery store. This is very easy to calculate for. The transaction begins when you enter the store. You fill your cart. 30 minutes later, you can tell the outcome of that.
Right.
Ours is a different animal. The moment the buyers start making decisions and making offers, we don't see the results of that for 21, 30, 45 days later.
Right.
But we can feel it in the air. And then I have a feeling that those results are going to manifest themselves in the data of September, October, November, so on and so forth. Now, we are a cyclical industry. We do see lulls through the winter naturally. However, I think it's going to be more pronounced than usual, and we're going to actually see, if you want buyers to show up, two things are going to happen. Interest rates are going to go down.
Which it looks like is happening, at least to a small degree.
The 10-year tells us that it is, to a small degree. Or sellers are going to have to start representing their properties at a 5 to 10% discount. They want to see a discount. That's what they want to see.
And the crazy thing is, I would venture that this is a short-lived. It might be 90 days. It might be 120 days. Mm-hmm. It feels like a transition, and to do that specific strategy while there's a significant lack of buyer enthusiasm, and it works so consistently, my experience tells me that is not going to last very long.
I agree with that.
That feels, I mean, you use the slack tide analogy. The tide is shifting. We're shifting with it. I mean, back in 2021, bidding wars. Fall of 2022, the market kind of came to a screeching shift with significantly increasing interest rates. I immediately called my prospective sellers that are about to list their houses and said, hold on. I used the $600,000 analogy. I'll just use that again. Hey, if we think that it was going to bid up above 600,000, we need to start at 650 and then back our way down every 2 weeks with a $25,000 price reduction. And that worked extremely well, because the scary thing in that market there for fall of 2022 through 2023 was, and honestly through 2024, was if one buyer's going to show up, they're going to buy the house. And if you listed it for 600 or you listed it for 625, the odds are they're going to pay you either, and there's going to be one person. And there wasn't very much inventory. And so I shifted immediately, and we started listing at the higher price point. Great, no problem. We didn't get 650. 2 weeks in, we drop it to 625, and then it would sell at either 625 or 600. But at least we had the confidence of knowing that we didn't list it at 600 and one person wanders in, buys it at 600, and he had this lingering feeling of, I wonder if it would have sold for more.
Yeah.
And just earlier this summer, we did a test case on the perfect property and proved dramatic results with this. And now we've been using the strategy over and over and over again. And on the example of one that we listed last week, the stats say maybe it should sell for $940, but in the current market, it is absolutely going to get punished at $940. We listed at $899, and we didn't get any offers this weekend. That's the scary, harsh reality. And as a result of that, like, we know for an absolute fact, with as many people as we had through that house this weekend, that it wouldn't have sold at $940. It wouldn't have sold for above, even though there are comps to say in the last couple of years that it did in the past. But the harsh reality is you have to be prepared to sell at that discounted price. And our experience tells us, because we do this significantly every month, and a seller does this once every 7 years on average, our experience tells us if you had listed at $940, you would have dropped, you would have dropped, you would have dropped, and you probably would have sold for $865. And it's kind of a breathtaking risk for the seller to list it at $899 and watch it not bid up, but also understand the position in the market that we're at, that if they hadn't been that aggressive, they would have gotten punished even more.
Yeah. So you had a recent listing, another one, you priced it appropriately, and by appropriately I say you comp it out at X, subtract 5%. I think that the exact subtraction based on the comp was about like 7, give or take 7%. And this is a very unusual situation I found myself in. You priced it out 7% below, right? So I'm talking to the buyers right now. And if you're a buyer out there, I had a very unusual conversation, and here's what happened. You priced it out 7% below.
Which property is this? Street?
We're talking about Stonewood.
Okay.
Stonewood. And then what happened? It bid up, just like you thought it would. Lots of activity.
Not as high as we hoped.
Not as high as we hoped, but you got a lot of foot traffic and you got a lot of showings. And on the outlier side, so significant standard deviations outside of the normal showings. We'll call normal showings over a weekend be like anywhere between 5 to 10 with 2 to 3 foot traffic groups on your open house. You had a total of, I think, about 20 pieces of foot traffic between open houses and showing, maybe even a little bit more. You got a phone call while we're showing this house. You get a phone call from somebody, and clearly highly intelligent person. They said this. They said, well, I sold my house back at the peak, and now I have a bunch of cash, and the next house I want to purchase it in the area that the house is listed in. I want to do a cash purchase, but here's the thing. I think that this house is valued in significantly lower than what it's worth, and I think it's going to bid up. But here's what I believe. I believe now is the time as a buyer for me to step in, because I think the prices are going to revert back, and I don't want to get involved in a bidding war.
Bro, like, you're hitting on probably one of the most important things for a buyer in the market to hear from a very sophisticated investor that's been holding off for a long time. Carry on.
So she says, I don't want to get involved in a bidding war because I think that you underprice this, and it's probably going to go up to, she said, about $415, $420. And she almost nailed it. So she obviously knows exactly where she's coming from. But here's what she said. But what I want to do is, and this is where I knew she had an intuitive sense on the real estate market. And I even asked her, are you in real estate? Because you seem to have a very good pin on the market and where it's at. She said this. She said, I want to make my move inside of the next 10 days before the Federal Reserve announces their interest rate drops and buyers come out of the woodwork and start buying things up. I don't want to be competitive. I want to find a house that's been sitting there for a while, that's overpriced, and come in under and walk in with a cash position.
Which is the biggest compliment we could get as listing agents, because she just said, hey, I'm a vulture. This ain't a dead carcass. You guys priced it strategically enough. I don't want to be part of this bidding war that just happened today.
Yeah. highly intelligent person. I asked her, I was like, are you involved in real estate? She's actually like, no, I'm not. I'm very keen on economics. I study economics very closely, and I know
specialty.
Yeah, I know exactly what's going to happen. And I told her, I said, well, you and I could be something.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We could talk all day about this. So her motivations were, what I need to do in the next 10 days. So if I was a buyer, and I'm thinking right now, we're at the slack tide moment. The buyers should be showing up after interest rates drop. So if you're a buyer and you're sitting there thinking, yes, you're right, I am thinking about the interest rate drop. That is on my mind. That is my approach. The other side, if you're thinking now is that move before the interest rates go down, congratulations, you're in that 5% that's sitting there for the iron striking hot right now, where the sellers are getting sort of, maybe they're having a difficult time grappling with the idea of, one, dropping their price, and two, that it's been sitting on there for a while. Stepping in might be your slack tide moment before they start pulling right out. That's what I'm thinking. Am I sure about that? Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. That's the crazy thing about markets in general. The free market works like an organism, and anyone that thinks, it's.
But there is people out there recognizing this hypothesis right now, so we're not alone.
And something that we've been talking about for weeks and weeks now.
Yeah.
I think that we're probably, I think we're probably coming to the end of a really ripe opportunity. And the truth is, if the interest rates don't go down enough to substantially change buyer sentiment, then this opportunity will continue to be ripe. But it's ripe today. I don't know how much longer it's going to be ripe. And that is stale listings. I don't even want to say overpriced listings, because we have multiple listings that are substantially under what they absolutely should sell for, and they're not moving. But stale listings that have been on the market for a long time, buyers walking in, again, with like intestines of steel, saying, hey, I'm going to do 5%, I'm going to do 7%, I'm going to do 10% under list price or under market value. Comp it out. Look at, like, we have listings at $979 and $875 specifically on two of our listings that are screaming deals. And so ultimately, I would look at those and say, hey, a buyer should comp it out and say, oh, that $979 listing is absolutely worth every penny of $1.25 million, and it hasn't sold. So maybe not necessarily on all of the listings come in 5 or 10% under list price, but at least come in 5 or 10% under actual comp value while there's this lull in the market. Because if interest rates, one of two things is going to happen. Interest rates go down and buyer sentiment changes, or just buyer sentiment changes, right? I think earlier this year, buyers got to a point where they sort of made peace with, across history, 6% really isn't even that high of interest rate. And I'm not here to say it is or it isn't. That has to be a personal choice that somebody comes to a conclusion of. But across history, 6% is not a high interest rate. It sure as heck feels like it when you refinance your house at 2.25% and you're selling that and buying. That might be a foolish choice. And a lot of sellers are making excellent life choices of saying, you know what, I'm going to stick with a house I don't really like, because I'm saving so much money on almost a free loan at 2.25% interest.
Yeah, 6% historically is par.
Right.
But here's the problem with par. If 6% is historically par, what's not par is the median household income multiplier to the current house price.
Explain that.
Okay, so let's go back in time to when housing interest rates were historically higher. So we're talking about the Paul Volcker era of anybody who bought a house in the 70s. And they're thinking to themselves, well, I bought my house at 10, 12, 15% interest rate, so your 6%, it's looking really good. Yeah, we're back in the 1970s. True, but during the 1970s, your median household income to the price of your house was 4 times. It's not 10 times, right? So right now we're sitting at, depending on your demographic or your geographical location, you could be sitting at a median household income to a housing price multiplier of 8 to 10 times.
And what are we at here in Kitsap County?
So median household income, I believe in this area, is 72,000.
I thought it was 79. Yeah, in the 70s.
It could be 79. Yeah. Don't quote me on that, but I think the first number starts with a 7. Your average home sale price is 600 plus.
Yeah.
So your multiplier is about 8.5.
Yeah.
So if you go back in time, you can say your interest rate was 8, 10, 12%, depending on when you bought, but your multiplier was only 3 or 4 times. So you may have only made $25,000 a year back then, and I'm throwing numbers out there, but then your housing price was only $75,000 or so. So the multiplier was significantly less. So if you track that over what your monthlies would have been, even with a higher interest rate, you were still in a much better position to buy, right?
For sure.
So here's the dilemma. So my question is that, are these multipliers going to change? Are the interest rates going to change? When are the monthlies going to actually reflect a more capable purchasing price for the buyers? And that's where you have this sort of listing price, interest rate, buyer sentiment conundrum that you battle with. So the question then becomes, what would you, and I'm asking you specifically, recommend to your buyers for a competitive offer position? How would you make an offer look good to a seller? What strategy would you implement? How would you approach that?
Bro, so we talked about this in the last episode, and let's delve into that a little bit. My hesitation in answering that is we're in such a different market right now. Let's talk as if we're coaching a buyer on one of our listings that's priced appropriately, substantially below market value, and they want to win, right? It's a completely different recommendation that I just made to go after older, stale listings that have been on the market for a while. But let's address the stale listings second. But first, to answer your question, there's a whole raft of kind of high-level tactical maneuvers that actually became almost standard during 2021, and they were like almost unheard of earlier in the market. The 5 things that everybody has to deal with is purchase price, earnest money, financing type, closing, time frame, and inspection. And so a couple of my favorite like negotiation tactics are for a buyer. On the buyer side, we're counseling buyers right now, is high earnest money. If you're absolutely serious about buying this, if you're not serious about buying this property, don't put high earnest money in. If you're just dabbling with it and you want to have the opportunity to back out with low risk, low earnest money is a great way to say, hey, you know what, I want to put an offer in, I want to pursue this, but I really want to look at other options. If you're dead set and you want to buy this house and you really want the seller to accept your offer, high earnest money is one of the coolest, most effective ways to convince the seller, hey, here's how serious I am. I'm going to put, standard is 1% of the purchase price, so at a $600,000 purchase price, that's $6,000.
Okay.
10,000, 20,000, multiplying 1% by 2 gives you 12,000. 12,000 does the same thing psychologically as 10,000. I like to think in 10, 20, 30,000, 25,000, like the big round number increments.
Sure.
Large earnest money makes sellers say, oh wow, this guy's serious, and if he backs out, he's going to lose such a large chunk of money, he's not going to back out, so I can count on this person. And it also sort of like flashing your cards at the poker table. Hey, look, I have money, and I'm willing to risk it because I love your house so much. The second thing, and the cool thing about high earnest money is it doesn't cost you a penny more if you get the house. Obviously, everybody wants a high dollar value. The second, no significant additional expense thing that a buyer can do is do a pre-inspection. Everybody talks about waiving an inspection. That's a really, really risky thing to do. Sure. I've flipped a lot of houses over the years, and so I walk through a house and I don't hire an inspector. A buyer should hire an inspector. They should get either an inspector or a very competent contractor to walk through the house, attic, crawl space, look at every square inch, look at all the functioning tools in the house.
So you're saying inspect the house before you offer on the house?
An inspection is important, but something that most people don't think about is you always get your offer accepted, and then do an inspection. But if you do a pre-inspection, you front load that expense before you even know if your offer has been accepted. Now you can do the baller move of waiving your inspection while also having done an inspection. So you walk in, you spent the $600, you got the detailed home inspection, you have all of the information you need, and then you have the ability to say, I am going to not make this offer contingent on a home inspection, but you didn't actually overlook the opportunity to do an inspection. You did it. You just took that risk ahead of time before your offer got accepted. So high earnest money and pre-inspection puts you in a really, really tactical position to kind of separate yourself. We just reviewed 5 offers with our sellers right before coming over here. The people that waive their inspections are in a completely different category because it removes so many questions for a seller. So high earnest money and waived inspection. Obviously, higher price point is, everybody loves a high price point, but at some point that becomes an irresponsible thing to do. Obviously, the third thing that's really cool that costs you no extra money, depending on some kind of detailed factors of when you close and when your first mortgage payment might be. But as a general rule, it costs you no more money to have a highly competent lender and to have gone through all the extra steps with that lender, so that when you put your offer in, you can say, I'm going to close in 14 days or 21 days instead of 30 days. Again, you're not spending any more money. You're just being more prepared, basically putting more work in ahead of time than the other people to get your offer accepted. Now, take those 3 of the 5 elements and apply those to the strategy that I'm recommending you as the buyer in this market right now to do, and go hawk overpriced or stale listings that have been on the market for a while. That buyer, take those exact same strategies and apply them to underbidding on a house. So that $600,000 house that's been sitting there for 75 days, go make a $565,000 offer, do a pre-inspection, put $20,000 worth of earnest money down, and say you're going to close in 17 days. Make sure it closes on a work day, and I gotta send these guys a voicemail. And then make your offer price low. And you've employed all the exact same strategies that became highly, highly, highly proven in the craziest bidding war markets, but you're using them as sugar to make the medicine go down of a lower price point. And we found that to be incredibly effective, because if you basically act belligerent and you're like, these guys have been on the market for 80 days, we're going to ask for a 10-day inspection, which is just the silliest thing to do in any, there's no reason to wait 10 days to do your inspection. You employ all these effective tools that were good at winning bidding wars, and you're the only offer, and all you're doing is trying to make it the most attractive for a seller to say, you know what, son of a gun, these guys love my house, they clearly love my house, they put blood, sweat, and tears into this offer, but they're asking me to drop the price by 7.5%. That offer is dramatically more likely to get accepted at a lower price point if you make every other single element highly attractive to the seller, and then you walk away paying a 30-year mortgage on a way lower price point, and all the little sacrifices that you made are momentary.
Let me ask you a question about the inspection.
Talk to me.
So, as it pertains to the inspection, I got 2 offers. All things face value is exactly the same. One's a waived inspection, one's not a waived inspection. Can I assume that the not waived inspection is the preempt to the second negotiation that's actually going to happen on the house? Yeah,
that's absolutely 100%. I mean, I like to use dating analogy. Everybody always talks about, oh, just wait till you're married. Your wife will be totally different. And thank the Lord, I've been married for 1.5 years, and that is not always the case when you get a wonderful woman. But putting an offer in is kind of like the first date. Okay. You haven't seen the whole picture. And if there is an inspection period, you can absolutely guarantee every single, no matter how nice that buyer is, no matter how nice that agent is, the dynamic instantly changes the minute you're under contract, because there is no downside for them to come back and ask for a $100,000 price reduction. There's no downside. All you have to say is no. But if a seller says no to whatever is being asked, they risk the very likely possibility that that buyer just walks away.
I see. So what you're saying is that you hit me with an inspection, there's going to be a second ask. That's what
Absolutely.
you're saying. Okay.
Almost every scenario.
If that's the case, then a waived inspection holds a significant amount. If I'm selling my house and you bring me 2 offers, right, and I'm just playing this out in my mind. If I'm selling my house and you bring me 2 offers and I have a waived inspection, I have a price and I have a maybe price over here because you're going to have a second ask.
2 full price offers. One has a 3-day inspection and one has a waived inspection. The waived inspection has a significantly higher it's just a better offer, and you know that the $600,000 offer with the waived inspection isn't really a $600,000 offer, and the $600,000 offer with a 3-day inspection is we have no idea what this price is actually going to be once we get done with the inspection.
Second question, also on the inspection front, how many buyers would you say are aware of the power of a waived inspection? So I'm going to implement your strategy right now. I'm a buyer. We're going out there. You're saying, hey, I want to do a pre-offer inspection. So we're going to get the security that I'm looking for, right? And then we're going to submit a waived inspection after that information. How many buyers would you say are aware of that strategy currently that you actually engage with?
Every buyer that has a spectacular agent knows about this.
Okay.
And there's some really spectacular agents out there. And I've talked to most of them in the last couple of weeks.
Gotcha. See, that's a really interesting strategy. And I think that the thing is that when I go back in time about the home buy sell process that I go through as just the general consumer, right? The general person not involved in the real estate market, I would never think that a waived inspection actually carries any weight. Well, here's what I would think. I would think I'm going to buy this house. Of course I'm going to inspect this house. Why would I do such a significant investment without knowing what's under the hood? Why would I buy this car without lifting up the hood? Right. But from the seller side, that's from the buyer side. From the seller side, if I know that a waived inspection means that I don't have to renegotiate this, I would pick that every single time. All things generally similar, because I know I'm not going to have to go through a renegotiation process here in 5 days or whatever.
And let's shift to the seller side. We work with a ton of sellers. This is why we recommend to our sellers to do a pre-inspection.
Yeah.
You spend $600 as a seller. It's normally a buyer expense. Mm-hmm. A seller spends $600 before you list the house. We bring our inspector out, do a full inspection, and it's an awkward thing to do because it kind of feels like, well, hold on a second. We're going to tell them every wart, pimple, and woeful with this house. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then we arm those buyers that want to, they either want to win a bidding war or they want to know, is this a good value and just bring in a full price offer, or a buyer's bringing a low offer on our listing. All the information is there and they're armed with all the knowledge that they need. You can even download or have your agent download our pre-inspection on one of our listings and call that inspector and say, hey, you remember 123 Cherry Lane? Can you cut the crap and just tell me? Everybody always thinks, oh, an inspector is just, I got to have my own inspection, which is great. There's nothing wrong with somebody wanting to get their own inspection. But something that people need to know, there are competent inspectors and less competent inspectors. There's inspectors that are poor at communicating and excellent at communicating. But inspectors have licenses that they have to maintain, and it is not something that inspectors do to fluff. As a general rule, I've rarely ever seen it where an inspector covers up something. It is their license is on the line, and they're only making $500, $600 per house. They're way more interested in maintaining their integrity as a critic of houses than trying to cozy up to some real estate agent and cover something up. And so you get on the phone with an inspector, or you look at an inspection, and you can pretty much take to the bank, hey, these people have been forthright and honest, and this is the exact condition of the house, which facilitates, as a seller, that facilitates buyers bringing waived inspections, which then you can look at that offer and say, oh, this $600,000 means $600,000.
Mm-hmm. I can see the reluctance from the seller side. You're asking them to go swimming on their first date,
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. I can see the reluctance. Absolutely.
And what I tell all of our sellers is the inspection, 90% of the point of you doing a pre-inspection is exclusively just to be full disclosure, and here's exactly what you're getting. Now, 10% of that inspection is if you find something that's a glaring problem with the house, you want to fix it. And every seller does. Like, I've rarely ever encountered a seller that's like, oh, I've got a broken pipe under my house. That's the next guy's problem. They don't want there to be anything. You don't, as a seller, want to have some glaring problem. And if there's something that an inspector is going to find, and you wait to be under contract and have your buyer's inspector find that glaring thing that you could have easily fixed, that's potentially thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars down the drain, and a perception from a buyer standpoint of, oh, I was excited about this house, now I'm not excited, and I'm on edge wondering what else is wrong with this house that you could have avoided by simply having a pre-inspection.
I see. Thank you. I was always curious about that with the waived inspection. Where does it actually pull? Where's the leverage? How does it actually favor into the seller's perspective, and how you would combat about that from a buyer's?
And let's be real. Once 1 out of 10, maybe 1 out of 5, probably more like 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, you feel silly doing a pre-inspection because you get one offer, that buyer comes in and they say, we want our own inspection, and then you're like, why do we pay $600 to do an inspection? This guy's going to do his own inspection. And let me tell you why, even in that scenario, it was worth every penny. 2 things. One is you either validated or discovered there was something, like maybe there's nothing wrong with your house. Great. Good that you know that. Mm-hmm. Or you did find something wrong, and you avoided the possibility of a buyer finding some unpleasant surprise that you were able to avoid. But the real value is when you've done a pre-inspection as a seller and you've listed your house, full disclosure, here are the beautiful pictures, and here's the ugly truth of everything that's wrong with the house, because every house has things that are wrong with it. And then a buyer then goes and does their own inspection. You have completely out-negotiated them ahead of time. There are no surprises. You already know exactly what you're going to find at that house, and every inspector is going to look at things a little bit differently. But as a general rule, when that seller has a buyer that does an inspection, they're going there and they're discovering all the same things that the seller told them. So you just took out from underneath the legs of the buyer and the buyer's agent the opportunity to come and say, well, there are these things. You're exactly right. You're right. There are those things. But we knew that, and we priced it into the house.
Yeah. You already knew that. Full disclosure. Understood. Yeah, now that I think about it, the majority of offers accepted in a multiple offer scenario is waived inspection, number 1. Number 2, the majority of offers, when they know there's going to be a bidding war, present a waived inspection because they know that their offer holds more strength with a waived inspection. I think that the thing that's really unusual to me is that coming from newer industry implementation is not knowing how much that actually held weight.
And the coolest thing about that is it costs you $600. Now,
$600.
Let's ish average. Let's just be real. I lost my train of thought. Josh, how long have we been talking?
This is a little over 15 minutes at this point.
Okay, so we definitely need to land the plane.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is, let's just be real. It really bites when you're a buyer and you enter a bidding war situation. You went out and did a pre-inspection ahead of time. You spent $600 not knowing your offer is going to get accepted. Today we got 5 offers on a listing, 4 of which had waived inspections. Now, thankfully, those guys were using our pre-inspection. But usually when we're doing a waived inspection, it's because our clients paid $600. We went out there with them, we did the pre-inspection, and it bites to get an offer rejection and be sitting there holding a $600 bill of a house you're not going to be able to buy. And it's totally appropriate to say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to risk that. These are just strategies that are proven, and in the right situation, they end up working, but it's not always the right fit.
Buyer strategy, high earnest money, waived inspection, fast close. It's like the best thing you can bring to the table.
The cheapest things that you can bring to the table. The best thing you can bring to the table is lots of cash and
Lots
a
of
high
cash.
and a high offer.
Right.
But the reason why I recommend
Right.
those things is, in the end, you're not really spending much, if any, more money. The only thing you're spending more money on is $600 for a pre-inspection. Those three things.
Got it. Love it. So that's a buyer strategy.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Guys, come back in a couple weeks. We're going to keep talking. We're going to be breaking down the market. We're going to be talking about what's happening out there, what we're seeing work, and we can't wait to hear from you what you think is going on in the market, what you think we should know, and what you should think we should be talking about. Look forward to seeing you guys in a couple of weeks.